It's important that we have a sense of perspective about our priorities. In Iran, they hang you for the crime of being gay. They're currently imprisoning an American preacher for spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ in Iran. We should focus on the most important priorities that our country faces right now.
Well, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, you could say he has a point. You could say things are worse, could be worse for gay people in this country. At least we're not around. Let's bring in our panel. Megan Barth, founder of ReaganBaby.com, and staying with us for our conversation is TV and radio commentator Ellis Hennigan. All right, Dan Savage, who Rick Santorum obviously doesn't like, look it up. I don't want to get into that aspect of everything, was quick to fire back at Tom Cotton. Let's take a listen.
The hypocrisy of people like Tom Cotton, who wants America and to get credit for being better on gay issues, and will point to how bad it is elsewhere to justify making it worse here. How do you rationalize that except through some sort of bigot blender brain?
Bigot blender brain. Ellis, your take on Savage's take on Cotton.
I like alliteration. I'm entirely in favor of all those B's. Listen, there's a genuine debate going on in America, and I got to say, I'm very heartened by it. What pleases me is to see so many big corporations, big names in the American business coming to the defense of LGBT rights, right? It's Walmart, Eli Lilly,
but come on, Ellis, you know that's not
NASCAR.
because they really care about the issue.
NASCAR?
They're concerned about the bottom line. Every business should be. They're concerned about their responsibility to stockholders.
John, they are concerned about their employees and their stockholders. And frankly, a big change that's happened in American culture. Millions and millions of Americans say, you know what? If people want to live their life and choose who they love, they should not be discriminated against. They shouldn't have trouble patronizing a business. They ought to have the civil rights that other people do. And the vast majority of Americans, not a little loud minority, but the vast majority of Americans now agree with that. That's a big deal.
All right, Megan, go ahead.
To Ellis's point, the vast majority of Americans don't disagree with what you had just stated. What we disagree with is forcing Christians or forcing any religion to partake in a ceremony against their beliefs. That's what the RFRA is about. It's to protect religious liberty. Memorial Pizza did not say that they would not serve gays. They were not discriminating against gays. They would simply exercise their religious liberty, their discretion, to not take place in a ceremony that violates their religious beliefs.
Well, Megan, let me ask you something.
You can blow this out of proportion and make it a civil rights issue. It is not. Existing RFRA laws have been on the books since 1993. No one has been discriminated against. If anyone has been discriminated against, it is Christians, as they are now being targeted as a hate group.
Well, Megan, let me ask you something that Alan Dershowitz said earlier here today on the program. He essentially said that there's a difference between asking a baker to bake a cake for a gay couple than asking a priest to perform a marriage for a gay couple, and that the courts would already determine that one is different from the other, so therefore this statute and these statutes are not needed. What do you say to Alan Dershowitz's point on this?
If someone has an objection, I'm not going to speak for all priests, I'm not going to speak for all Christians, but if someone has an issue that performing a ceremony or being a part of a ceremony that would violate their tenets, their religious beliefs, then they should conscientiously and legally be able to object. Steven Crowder just did a video up in Dearborn, Michigan, where he walked into a Muslim bakery and asked for a cake for a gay wedding for he and his partner. This, of course, he's married to a woman, but for he and his partner. And they refused to bake the cake for him and sent him to another bakery across the street that would be more than happy to accommodate his needs.
Well, Ellis, what's to stop me from just saying
I'm going to go back against the
Muslim. Let me see if I can, guys. Let me see if I can
conscientiously.
Megan, let Ellis weigh in real quickly.
Megan, let me see if I can draw an important distinction. Right, this is a wonderful holiday for both Christians and Jews today, and there's nobody in America that's being stopped from commemorating in an appropriate way. There is a difference, however, from practicing our faith and being in business. Once you open a business, you fall under various laws in our country that require you not to discriminate against your employees or your customers. So it's fine, pray, worship, love, marry whoever you want, but when it comes to business, trading money for services and goods, you have to serve the public. The distinction is very clear, and frankly, we ought to just all agree with it and move on.
All right, well, Megan, I know you got a lot to say about that issue, but we only have 30 seconds before we're going to take our next commercial break. The good news is we do have time to discuss this more in detail when we come back. We also want to talk about Robert Menendez and get your take from both of you on what do you think is really going on here. Is this political persecution, well-timed trial and charges here? Is Menendez a patsy? All those questions, we're going to dig into that coming up. Megan Barth and Ellis sticking around for our political panel. We'll be right back after this. And we welcome you back into America's Forum. I'm John Bachman. Alongside us, Megan Barth and Ellis Hennigan. Megan, I want to give you a chance to respond to what Ellis was just saying.
Sure. So back to the RFRA laws. They are on the books in order to provide people with an option, a legal recourse. So if they are to go to court, then the judge can decide whether or not they have exercised their religious liberty and can be protected by that. The Hobby Lobby case is a very good example of this that was up towards the Supreme Court, and they won. They did not want to provide, based on Obamacare and forcing businesses to provide birth control and abortive pills. Hobby Lobby sued and won. And they won because they did not, as a private business, they did not want to provide their employees abortive pills and birth control because it was against their religion.
Again, I want to leave this here, but I do think a lot of folks can make a distinction between these abortifacient drugs, which they see as an abortion, and baking a cake. But that's this topic I'm sure will continue, but I want to leave that there because I do want to get to the Bob Menendez case. Showing a lot of confidence, guys, out in front of the courthouse. Let's play a clip of Bob Menendez responding to the charges currently levied against him.
I'm outraged that prosecutors at the Justice Department were tricked into starting this investigation 3 years ago with false allegations by those who have a political motive to silence me. But I will not be silenced. I'm confident. I'm confident at the end.
Well, there you see the applause there for Menendez from his supporters. Now, on one hand, he does kind of have a point. There are some suspicious things about the timing of all of this. Menendez's resistance to the Obama administration on Cuba and on Iran, but also as a guy who's covered political corruption for a long time, I've seen a lot of politicians stand up there defiant to the charges only to wind up in a federal penitentiary. Ellis, what do you think? Is Menendez headed to jail?
No, I think he could well be. I got to tell you, John, I don't have a lot of sympathy for the guy. I mean, there were some false allegations floating around, but everything I can see from the case makes it sound like there's some pretty strong evidence that he was violating the laws. He tried to advance the business interests of some of his wealthy Cuban-American supporters down in South Florida. So, you know what? If the evidence is there, charge the guy, convict him at trial if the jury agrees, and send him off to prison. No tears from me for Bob Menendez.
Well, it happened to Ted Stevens. It happened to Tom DeLay, Megan, but some folks say those cases, since those guys were eventually vindicated, might preempt an actual trial here for Menendez.
Well, from what I've read, it looks like the case is pretty strong. However, we're dealing with the DOJ, and the DOJ tends to be very selective in who they want to go after. For example, Lois Lerner has just been
Great point, Lois Lerner. No contempt
when you
charges.
have a Justice Department who sees justice through a racial lens or a political lens, well, that's not justice. And time again, this DOJ has not stood up with an objective lens. So if Bob Menendez perhaps made someone angry in the administration due to the hoax of an Iran deal, then I wouldn't be surprised that he's targeted. But Lois Lerner walks.
Ellis, this is Eric Holder's Justice Department.
You know what, though? It's kind of silly to answer every single question with "we hate Obama," right? I mean, there's got to be some other.
You were the first person to say
some
Obama. I
issue.
think you do mention the Justice Department, the administration.
No,
but
seriously, the corrupt Justice Department. You know what? Judge these things on their merits. I mean, they've indicted this guy. There's a full court record of it. I mean, the arguments from the evidence that we've seen so far.
But how do you get past the fact?
I mean, it doesn't seem to me like some political hit job.
How do you get past the timing of this? You have to admit the timing is at least a little bit suspicious, and it's plausible that he's being tried to sideline him.
Hold on a second. This investigation has been going on in a methodical way for just about 3 years at this point.
Methodical? I don't know, but you're right about the 3 years
pull the trigger.
Part.
At some point, you got to either pull the trigger or vindicate the guy. I mean, it cannot be an answer that every single thing that the government does is all a factor of the fact that we hate Obama. We got to come up with a better argument than that, don't we?
Well, I agree. The Obama problem, for those who have it, is a 2-year problem, so we'll have to see what comes out of that. But I want to thank you both. We're running out of time here, and it's been a lively conversation. We'll have you both back, of course, as always. And Ellis, you're going to stick around for a little bit longer, I think. But Megan Barth, I'm sorry. Pleasure to talk to you. ReaganBaby.com is her website. Please do check it out. Have a great day, everybody. We'll be right back with more here on America's Forum after this.